Hold that thought for a second, Glenn, because
I've
got exactly the two right people to help me with this new piece of breaking news. We've got Tom Winter is with me. Special counsel Robert Mueller's team has responded to Michael Flynn's court filing, emphasizing that Michael Flynn, quote, chose to make false statements about his communications with the Russian ambassador weeks before the FBI interview. It reads, nothing about the way the interview was arranged or conducted caused the defendant to make false statements to the FBI on January 24th. To understand what all this means, in the middle of this conversation, I want to bring in our investigations reporter, Tom Winter, who I haven't seen for at least 7 minutes. Tom, what does this mean?
Simply put, earlier this week on Tuesday, Michael Flynn's team did raise a question. They said, look, we still agree that he lied and we're not trying to get out of this, they say, but we do have some issues with the way that the FBI conducted the interview and how this all came about when Michael Flynn was first asked about his calls with the Russian ambassador, Sergei Kislyak. So the Mueller team was directed to respond. Also, they were directed to provide 302s, which is essentially a federal form that is a memorandum of the investigation. Basically, the notes that you would make after you conducted
anybody who gets interviewed formally by the FBI, there's a 302.
Typically the case, exactly right. And so what we have today is we have Mueller's team saying, look, the circumstances of Michael Flynn's interview, and I'm paraphrasing a little bit here to make it easier to understand, the circumstances of Michael Flynn's interview, which they described, don't mitigate the fact that he lied. They say nothing about the way the interview was arranged or conducted caused the defendant to make false statements to the FBI on January 24th. This is interesting. This is something that reporters have been pointing out this week. It wasn't just that Michael Flynn lied to federal investigators, to the FBI, but he also had lied to media outlets leading up to this, and he also lied to members of the presidential transition team as well as the vice president. They also cited Meet the Press interview, which I'll get to. They said the defendant, who's Michael Flynn, chose to make false statements about his communications with the Russian ambassador weeks before the FBI interview, when he lied about the topic to the media, the incoming vice president, and other members of the presidential transition team when faced with the FBI's questions on January 24th. During an interview that was voluntary and cordial, the defendant repeated the same false statements. The court should reject the defendant's attempt to minimize the seriousness of those false statements to the FBI. In the course of the filing, on page 2, it details a number of media interviews that occurred, including interviews that occurred with Vice President-elect Mike Pence at the time, Chief of Staff, then Chief of Staff Reince Priebus, and incoming White House Press Secretary Sean Spicer. It cites specifically a Meet the Press interview where Priebus talks about the subject, and as well as several other interviews that occurred as well, where they had the false information from Flynn. And that was a whole part of this, that Flynn not only lied to the FBI, but he lied to the Trump White House about these conversations. So the Mueller's team here being very careful to go through the circumstances of this interview, how it came about. Of course, it garnered a lot of attention because Andrew McCabe, no longer with the FBI. Pete Strzok, who was one of the people that conducted the interview, no longer with the FBI. We know why. Pete Strzok was involved in an extramarital affair, and text messages between him and the woman he was having the affair with, Lisa Page, were biased, quite frankly, in some of those messages. Not necessarily that their investigation was biased. The things they said were not things that were very flattering or complimentary of the president or his team at all. So that's one of the reasons why Peter Strzok is no longer a part of it. But those individuals have become a lightning rod for criticism. People in and outside of the Bureau would agree with a lot of that criticism, that those are conversations they shouldn't be having. I have it in front of me. But as a result, they've become a real kind of a part of this case.
Hey there, I'm Chris Hayes from MSNBC. Thanks for watching MSNBC on YouTube. If you want to keep up to date with the videos we're putting out, you can click subscribe just below me, or click over on this list to see lots of other great videos.